Okay, so now we're going to practice UV layout a little bit. It's very important on this object since we're wanting to use displacement maps to for animation purposes. And in my case, I've got a pretty wonky shaped pumpkin. So for starters, if I gotta stop using my hot box for you guys. Yeah. So with my pumpkin selected, if I go to create UVs, I can do this cylindrical map and release, and now I have a cylindrical map of my pumpkin. So what good does that do me? Well, to really know, I need to split my panels. So I go panel, let's see, layouts. I'm going to do 2 side by side, and this panel over here I'm going to change it to my UV texture editor. I'm going to zoom out, and there's my pumpkin. Now, the part of the pumpkin that I really want the face to be on is showing up just fine right now. It's right here in the front of my UV map. Now, if my texture that represents my face is going to end up somewhere in this region, right, of the UV space. This is the 0 to 1 UV space. All textures show in that space, and then they repeat in every direction infinitely.
We don't do something, we're going to have our face in places where we don't want it.
Yes. So that means that your mesh needs to reside, or your UVs need to reside, all of them need to reside within this box, the 0 to 1 UV space. Okay. Now, I probably only want to put the part of my pumpkin in here that is going to, maybe the face is going to be on. Okay. So I need to cut up this pumpkin a little bit. So to start with, I'm going to undo, and I'm going to go into edge mode. I'm going to start cutting this up. Now I know for sure that the face of my pumpkin, I'm going to do something a little bit less traditional, is going to be on the top of my pumpkin. I want to use the stem as the nose in my case. Okay? Now for you guys, that may be the side. Okay, but you want, whatever it is, you want to isolate that area. So I'm going to I'll do it both ways. I double click that line, and that is going to be everywhere that the face of my pumpkin can exist. Okay? Now with that done, I can shift right click in my UV texture editor over here and tell it to cut UVs. Now, something I like to do that makes this a little bit easier to understand what's going on, to know where UV shell borders are at. If you go to display, polygons, texture border edges, it will turn on those. Okay, which reveals another problem. Anywhere the edges appear thicker now means that I already have a texture border edge right there. So I need to hold down shift and invert my selection, and I want to sew all the rest of these together. So I've selected all those edges, I shift right click in my UV texture editor and sew UVs. Okay. Well, the marking menu should, but the hotbox doesn't. So where I went, just in case, Well, I'm going to do this tutorial this way, and then we'll do a little research on that. Okay, so now the only thick line I have is the one that I cut. So it'll be in the tutorial. Now, I don't want the stem. It's going to have its own texture, so I don't ever want it to end up with part of the face on it. So I'm trying to get in here so I can select all the base of the stem. Okay, now I got all the base of the stem. I'm going to shift, right click, cut UVs. Okay, now if I go to UV mode, ooh, that's new. Shift, if I right click, go to UV mode, and go to UV shell mode, that's actually pretty handy. So I can select all that. And then I'm going to translate this, but I need to convert it to UV selection first. So I hold down Control, right click, and go to UVs. Now I can slide those off to the side for now. Okay, that's my stem. Okay, now I'm going to select this, shift, Control, right click, to UVs, and now I got those. I'm going to move these over here. Okay, and then in my UV texture editor, I can just drag select over the rest of these, change it to UVs, and now I've got 3 different groups of UVs. One's the area that's outside the face, one's the facial area, and one is the stem. I want to grab this section here where my face is going to be, and in my case I'm going to use a planar map. So if I go to Create UVs, Planar Mapping, that's what I get. Okay. Now I'm not showing you the option box, but I will say you could use the option box to set these settings in advance. I find it's easier just to go ahead and do it and then set the options over in the channel box. So I need to change my rotate Y from 90 to 0. Okay, I'm just going to zero that out. It wasn't really necessary, but I did it. Okay, and then I rotate in X 90, and now look at my UV texture editor. You can see the UVs are starting to look nicer. Okay, now this is really important. I want the projection width and height to be identical to each other, because if I do, that means that I'm working in a one-to-one space when I'm drawing my UVs. That means the face that I draw in Photoshop is going to look the same when it's in Maya if I do this right here. So I enter a value of 1 for both of them, and now you can see that my pumpkin, that's what it looks like. Okay, now I need to shrink this down into this UV space. So after I've made them both the same, I select both the projection width and height. I'm going to control middle mouse click and drag, or just middle mouse click and drag in my 3D viewport. It's not updating. Okay, so I'm going to middle mouse click and drag a little bit at a time until it all fits in there. Okay, now this is all the UV layout I need to do to make sure that this pumpkin, when I draw a face on here in Photoshop, and it's in a square file, it's going to map directly to this UV space, and it's going to look right. Okay? Now I can go ahead and do the rest of the pumpkin however I please.